It's 2025, and the illusion of prosperity has finally shattered. America is living through Great Depression 2.0, but this time it's silent, hidden behind credit card swipes, gig economy apps, and eviction notices printed on cheap paper. Families once called middle class now ration groceries like wartime survivors and sleep in cars parked beside empty luxury condos. The promise that hard work guarantees survival has been erased, replaced by endless debt and collapsing hope. We were told this was the land of opportunity. Instead, it's become a land of desperation, where millions struggle to exist in third-world conditions inside the richest empire on Earth. The Great Depression 2.0 isn't playing out in black and white photographs. It's unfolding in real time, in full color, across every American city. From Los Angeles to Philadelphia, tent colonies sprawl beneath billion-dollar high-rises, like a cruel reflection of the wealth above them. Over 650,000 Americans sleep without shelter each night. Yet 11 million vacant homes sit dark, held by hedge funds and speculators waiting for prices to rise. This isn't coincidence, it's arithmetic. Number 1. The housing extraction machine. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment has surged to $1,870 a month. The median wage limps behind at $27 an hour, barely enough to cover survival, let alone savings. To qualify for that tiny apartment, a tenant now needs proof of nearly $65,000 in yearly income and several $1,000s in deposits. For the 78% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, that barrier might as well be a concrete wall. Families earning $50,000 a year are forced to spend more than half their income just to stay indoors. A single missed paycheck or medical bill can send them straight to the curb. Drive a few miles, approximately a few 0.2 kilometers, outside any downtown skyline, and you'll see what economists politely call housing insecurity and what ordinary people call hell. RVs lined along curbs, families washing in public restrooms, workers napping in parking lots before their second shift. These are not the unemployed. These are nurses, warehouse workers, school teachers. In the new America, poverty wears a uniform. Housing has stopped being shelter. It's an asset class. Private equity firms, foreign investors, and corporate landlords now own entire neighborhoods, converting homes into permanent revenue machines. Every rent payment is an invisible tax flowing upward. Billions a month extracted from working people who build the very cities they can't afford to live in. Economists call it financialization, but for millions it's legalized eviction by spreadsheet. Behind the statistics lies a quiet extinction of autonomy. Home ownership once symbolized stability. Now it marks the boundary between freedom and servitude. When mortgage interest hits 7.2%, the dream of buying collapses. The median American household would need $110,000 annually just to qualify for an average home loan. Only 12% of renters will ever cross that line. The crisis doesn't end at affordability. It feeds into infrastructure rot. While investors flip condos for profit, 17 million homes nationwide suffer from plumbing failures, wiring decay, or structural collapse. Rural regions see water systems shut down. Urban cores face record evictions. Yet the response is always the same. Build more luxury towers for the rich, while ordinary Americans are pushed into RVs, basements, and parking lots. This is not a housing shortage, it's a housing capture. What was once the foundation of the American dream has become its gravestone. And as housing becomes unattainable for the majority, the illusion of middle-class living officially dies, paving the way for a society where even existing requires permission. Number 2. The Healthcare Bankruptcy System. Once survival itself costs money, sickness becomes a death sentence. The housing crisis bleeds directly into healthcare because both are controlled by the same extraction machine. In 2025, the average emergency room visit in the United States costs $2,900. Compare that to $6 in Thailand or $12 in Mexico. Insulin that sells for $8 overseas is priced at $140 here. Every year, over 530,000 American families file for bankruptcy simply because they got sick. That's more than the population of Wyoming. This isn't healthcare failure, it's healthcare by design. Every hospital, insurer, and pharmacy operates as part of a financial pipeline engineered to move wealth upward. Hospitals now function more like hedge funds than sanctuaries of care. Private equity firms have purchased over 40% of emergency clinics, immediately hiking prices by 30 to 70%. Insurance companies collect record profits, while the average American's deductible has tripled in a decade, now averaging $2,800 per person. For many, that number might as well be a wall between life and death. The illusion of coverage is a cruel trick. Even with insurance, a 3-day hospital stay can easily top $80,000, and the patient is left to negotiate the bill like a hostage. Each aspirin is billed at $25, every blanket at $40, every heartbeat monitored at a price. Hospitals don't heal, they invoice, and the people they invoice are the same workers already crushed by rent, loans, and inflation. The result is a silent humanitarian crisis masked by fluorescent lights and corporate slogans. Americans delay care until diseases become fatal. They split pills, skip treatment, and die waiting for approval codes. In the world's richest nation, the #1 cause of personal bankruptcy is medical debt. This isn't an economic flaw, it's a moral collapse. Healthcare was never meant to bankrupt people. Yet here, debt has replaced recovery. The system profits when citizens stay sick, pay longer, and die indebted. What once defined progress now defines decay. The Great Depression 2.0 isn't only in empty wallets, it's in every hospital hallway, where survival has become a luxury commodity. Number 3. The rural abandonment strategy. The collapse of healthcare merges seamlessly with another wound, the disintegration of rural America. While cities drown in debt and rent, the countryside rots in silence. Politicians sell it as an escape, move somewhere cheaper, but cheap has become a synonym for abandoned. Across the Midwest and Appalachia, entire towns resemble economic graveyards, shuttered hospitals, crumbling schools, and roads eroded beyond repair. You can buy a house for $80,000, but the local job pays $14 an hour. You can own the land, but not a future. Over 70 rural hospitals have closed since 2020, and more than 600 remain at risk. Millions of Americans now live over an hour away from emergency care, and that distance often decides who lives or dies. Broadband deserts stretch across states, cutting off digital work and education. Manufacturing jobs, once the backbone of rural life, have vanished overseas, replaced by gig work and seasonal labor that can't sustain a family. The poverty rate in some counties now exceeds 25%. Household incomes have fallen to 1960s levels when adjusted for inflation. Infrastructure funds vanish before they reach the ground. Highways remain cracked, bridges rust, towns are forgotten. In many regions, residents still haul water from wells, not because they're traditionalists, but because running water systems have collapsed entirely. The nation that once electrified the world now leaves millions in literal darkness. This decay is not accidental neglect, it's strategic abandonment. Investment follows profit, not need. Wall Street extracts wealth from metropolitan housing and healthcare, while rural communities simply stop existing on the balance sheet. What remains is a hollow shell of a republic, miles, approximately 1.61 kilometers of land, stripped of vitality, purpose, and promise. This is how a country fractures without war. The divide isn't urban versus rural anymore. It's functional versus forgotten. Cities drown in overpricing. Rural towns die from underinvestment. And between them lies a widening void. A broken nation pretending it still functions. The rural decay isn't isolation. It's the logical outcome of a labor system that's been stripped of meaning. Number 4, the labor harvesting apparatus. For millions, work has become both the cage and the punishment. Modern economy demands endless motion but offers no advancement. Across America, over 9 million people now hold 2 or more jobs, and the average work week quietly stretches beyond 50 hours. Yet median real wages, adjusted for inflation, have barely moved in 2 decades. The harder people work, the poorer they feel. Corporations call this productivity. Economists call it growth. But for the worker, it's exhaustion weaponized. Labor has been redefined from a source of dignity to a tool of control. The 40-hour week, won through strikes and blood, has dissolved into a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week economy, where the phone never stops vibrating, and rest is seen as laziness. Employees are told they're lucky to have a job, even as rent consumes half their paycheck, and groceries rise 12% in a year. The line between survival and burnout no longer exists. Behind the curtain, the same forces draining housing and healthcare are reshaping labor itself. Automation replaces stability with temporary contracts. Artificial intelligence increases output but eliminates income. Stock markets celebrate every layoff as efficiency. Millions are working themselves into early graves, while corporate profits reach record highs of $2.8 trillion. Work no longer rewards, it harvests. Even professional workers once insulated now join the collapse. Teachers drive delivery routes, nurses moonlight online, engineers freelance to pay bills. The economy has turned citizens into perpetual hustlers, each one competing against an algorithm for permission to eat. This is not ambition, it's industrialized desperation. And as exhaustion becomes the new currency, something deeper breaks. A society cannot function when its people are too tired to dream, too busy to protest, and too scared to stop. The human spirit erodes quietly, not through unemployment, but through overwork disguised as success. America once promised that labor would lead to freedom. Today, it leads to nothing but another shift, another bill, another sunrise that feels exactly like the one before it. The working class didn't just lose its strength, it lost its successors. Number 5. The generational scam. The generation meant to inherit the nation is already giving up on it. For young Americans, the future has collapsed before it even began. They enter adulthood carrying an average of $39,000 in student debt, rent that consumes 45% of their income, and job markets flooded with underpaid temporary work. The dream of stability has been replaced with a permanent state of anxiety. College was once sold as the ladder to the middle class. Now it's a financial trapdoor. Universities operate like corporations, marketing degrees that cost $100,000 or more, while starting salaries remain stagnant. A generation that was told to study hard and succeed has discovered that education no longer guarantees anything except debt. And with home prices up over 40% since 2020, ownership is a fantasy. Millennials and Gen Z hold only 6% of national wealth, compared to baby boomers who held 21% at the same age. This economic paralysis is not just financial, it's psychological. When you realize that working hard no longer changes anything, ambition transforms into resentment. Surveys show 58% of Americans under 30 believe capitalism does more harm than good. It's not ideology, it's lived experience. They're watching their parents lose homes, their peers skip meals, and their own future disappear under compound interest. This despair isn't apathy, it's warning. Societies collapse not when people lose money, but when they lose belief. For the first time in modern history, more young Americans expect to be worse off than their parents. Hope, once the country's greatest export, has become unaffordable. A civilization dies when its youth no longer sees a future worth inheriting, and America is now staring directly into that mirror. Number 6. The working homeless reality. The generational collapse leads to a haunting truth. People aren't just poorer, they're disappearing from the formal economy altogether. The rise of the working homeless is the final stage of a system that no longer distinguishes between employment and survival. Across the nation, an estimated 2.5 million Americans now live in cars, RVs, storage units, or improvised shelters, many while holding full-time jobs. These are delivery drivers, warehouse clerks, medical assistants, retail managers. They're not outside society, they are its reflection. The average rent for a studio apartment has risen 29% since 2020, while real wages fell by 3% in the same period. In dozens of metropolitan areas, earning $25 an hour is no longer enough to qualify for a one-bedroom apartment. When a single rent hike of $400 a month can erase an entire family's stability, people don't vanish. They relocate into the cracks. Parking lots become neighborhoods, tents become addresses, storage facilities become homes with rent receipts. The danger isn't only physical, it's existential. When shelter becomes conditional, citizenship loses meaning. Housing is the foundation of everything else: work, health, safety, dignity. Remove that, and society disintegrates quietly. The homeless crisis is not a fringe problem. It's the visible symptom of a deeper truth. The economy no longer produces livable lives. Meanwhile, over 11 million housing units sit vacant nationwide, owned by corporations, investment trusts, and absentee landlords. These properties are deliberately withheld from the market to inflate prices. Every empty home is a financial instrument, not a human necessity. The result is absurd: an economy where homes exist for profit, not for people.
Politicians promise affordable housing, yet what they build is unaffordable by design, priced for subsidies, not citizens. Zoning laws, speculation, and profit structures ensure the problem stays profitable. Homelessness becomes the byproduct of policy, not poverty. What began as a housing crisis has mutated into a human rights failure. When a working population can't afford the roofs above them, the nation ceases to function as a society. It becomes an investment platform wearing the mask of democracy. And under that mask, millions quietly disappear, not from laziness, but from unaffordability itself. Number 7. The propaganda and breaking point. Once a society normalizes poverty, it must justify it. That's where propaganda begins. The system cannot function without psychological control, so it trains citizens to blame themselves for structural collapse. Every struggling worker is told they're bad with money. Every homeless person is labeled lazy. Every overworked mother is shamed for poor choices. It's not economics, it's behavioral conditioning. This narrative engineering is the most effective form of control ever devised. Corporate media floods the public with financial advice instead of financial reform. Cut your lattes, work harder, start a side hustle. Meanwhile, the same corporations raising prices by 20% are reporting record quarterly profits. Inflation is blamed on consumers, not monopolies. Housing shortages are pinned on too much demand, not deliberate restriction by institutional landlords. The manipulation is surgical. Convince the exploited that they're responsible for their own exploitation. Even government statistics reinforce the illusion. The unemployment rate ignores millions who've given up looking for work. Poverty thresholds are calculated using formulas from the 1960s that exclude modern expenses like childcare, debt, or healthcare premiums. By design, the data sanitizes suffering. As long as people believe the crisis is their personal fault, the architects of that crisis stay invisible. Social media deepens the delusion. Platforms promote hustle culture, luxury aesthetics, and algorithmic shame. Struggling individuals scroll through curated fantasies of success while doubting their own worth. Despair becomes isolation. Isolation becomes silence. It's the perfect loop, an exhausted, divided population too busy surviving to organize. The real genius of this system is that it weaponizes morality itself. People are told that struggling is a failure of character, not a symptom of policy. Compassion is replaced with contempt. And when empathy disappears, solidarity dies. This isn't merely propaganda. It's the invisible infrastructure holding the system together. The wealth extraction model doesn't just need your labor, it needs your belief. Once that belief collapses, power collapses with it. Number 8. Systemic design and the breaking point. Everything leading to this point, the unaffordable homes, the bankrupt hospitals, the overworked citizens, the vanishing youth, the quiet homelessness, flows from one root cause: design. This is not a broken system. It is a perfected one, engineered to extract every possible unit of value from human life, while convincing its victims they are free. Every institution,
banks, universities, real estate firms, healthcare conglomerates, operates as a gear in this machine. Together, they convert human labor, time, and emotion into dividends for a microscopic elite. The United States is no longer an economy. It's a harvesting operation. Corporations record-breaking profits of $2.8 trillion, yet household debt has surpassed $17.5 trillion, the highest in history. Every time the average worker earns a dollar, that dollar is already owned by landlords, lenders, insurers, or monopolies. The middle class was not destroyed by accident. It was monetized out of existence. The American worker became the collateral. The dollar became the leash. Global investors now view the United States as a resource colony of its own empire. Housing isn't for families. It's a bond. Education isn't for learning. It's debt servicing. Healthcare isn't for survival. It's an investment yield. Labor isn't for productivity. It's an input cost. And when a population becomes nothing but numbers on a spreadsheet, policy no longer serves people. It serves balance sheets. But every machine, no matter how efficient, eventually devours itself. That moment is approaching. The wealth gap has reached medieval proportions. The top 1% now controls over 32% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom half owns just 2.5%. Real wages are down, credit limits are maxed, and even the illusion of stability is cracking. When people can no longer afford to live, they stop believing in the story that kept them obedient. And that is when control begins to fail. Revolutions rarely announce themselves with noise. They begin with indifference. People stop caring. They stop voting. They stop participating. The social contract silently disintegrates. Already, trust in every American institution, media, government, corporations, banking, has collapsed to historic lows, below 25%. That distrust is not chaos, it is clarity. The public is finally recognizing that democracy has been replaced with debtocracy, a government of creditors, by creditors, for creditors. The consequences are inevitable. History has seen this pattern before. The Roman Empire hollowed itself out through debt slavery and elite consolidation. The French aristocracy ignored famine until the streets burned. The Soviet Union collapsed when belief became impossible. What destroys civilizations isn't war. It's internal rot disguised as stability. America is reaching that phase now. The breaking point won't come as a single event. It will arrive through steady normalization. Food insecurity rising past 44 million people. Rent devouring paychecks. Cities unable to maintain infrastructure. Millions quietly leaving the workforce. When enough citizens can no longer meet the minimum conditions for life, legitimacy evaporates. Governments cannot govern the starving. Corporations cannot profit from the dead. And so we reach the final illusion. The belief that reform will come from within. It won't. The same forces that created this collapse have captured the very institutions meant to fix it. Elections change faces, not systems. Bills pass, headlines fade, and the machine continues. The truth no one wants to admit is simple. The crisis is permanent because permanence is profitable. Yet within that darkness lies the faint outline of awakening. The moment people recognize they were never broken, only exploited, the narrative collapses. Empires end not when citizens lose hope, but when they lose fear. And that moment is coming. The end of the American dream isn't a tragedy, it's an unveiling. The curtain has fallen, and behind it stands the raw architecture of exploitation. What happens next depends on what the people decide to build from the rubble. History's warning is clear. When survival becomes rebellion, change becomes unstoppable. And that, more than anything else, is what terrifies those who built this system, because they know Once the silence ends, their empire does too.